So the next thing I'd like to talk to you about is the teacher crisis, and kind of finding out what do we actually mean by that expression, because it's kind of being used more and more. And for also, like, say those teachers like myself that work in a school where there doesn't appear to be a teacher crisis, and in the kind of borough that I work in, there seems to be enough teachers to go around. I work in a relatively happy school. There doesn't appear to be a crisis. From my viewpoint, so kind of what has your research shown that proves there's a teacher crisis? What does it mean for there to be a teacher crisis, and what are the causes?
Well, a bit like you, Adrian, I'm a stubborn optimist, and when I started the book, my premise was there's no crisis. You know, the word crisis doesn't help. You know, it's self-perpetuating. Actually, things are fine. You know, why are we making such a fuss? And then I started to dig, and there was some really quite humbling, quite shocking, and quite depressing stuff that I found out. And when I wrote the chapter of the book about the teacher crisis, it was incredibly difficult to write, because it was almost as if I was living these horrors. And I use the word horrors quite deliberately. So one of the first things that I looked into and found out a lot about is this whole idea of toxic schools, which is something that Sam Sims and Becky Allen discuss in their book, The Teacher Gap. There are around 100 in the country. And the bottom line is that if these schools weren't churning through staff as quickly as they are, then we wouldn't have a crisis. How's that for, wow. You know, we know about the growing population, we know about the number of teachers needed, we've read all the stories. If those toxic schools were not destroying teachers' careers, and again, I use that word advisedly, then we would not have a crisis. How's that for something to wake up and think about? So I'm very keen that these schools are held to account, and as yet I've not really seen any evidence from Ofsted or the DfE as to how these schools are being held to account. And what makes a toxic school? Well, toxic schools is my term. Sausage machine schools is what Becky and Sam call them. But I would say some of the main characteristics is that they're based around systems rather than people. So some of my research participants have talked about meetings which go on for hours and hours and hours, in which not a single student is discussed. It's all policies and graphs and everything else. They tend to be quite rigid in their routines. Staff are often ranked in order of aptitude and ability, and there's a very clear agenda to get rid of those whose face doesn't quite fit. They're also characterised often by something called presenteeism, a phrase which Jill Berry passed on to me. And presenteeism, we've all seen it, is that pressure to be the first at work and the last to leave. So these schools will often actually be open until 10 o'clock at night. I don't know about your school, but my school closes at 6 most nights. And it's quite common to see the car park pretty much empty by 5. And that's fine, because actually if you're doing your job, don't care when, where, how you're doing it, if you're getting it done, that's fine. But these schools often have very long opening hours, and there is that pressure to be seen to be working. So that, you know, that they locked me in, you know, pride. Oh, I got locked in and I had to get the caretaker to come and release me. And I'll speak from first-hand experience when I say that caretakers are not impressed by and nor should we be. These schools will also be characterised by high levels of staff absenteeism, which isn't surprising when we think about it, because actually when teachers feel ground down, they start to take time off. And this links into something else that, you know, I started off with my Pollyanna view of teaching. And I did a survey, and 3,604 teachers responded. And some of these statistics really woke me up. So I'm just looking down at my book now to look at it. 52% of the teachers who responded would strongly disagree with the statement, my workload is manageable. 82% of the respondents said they experience anxiety directly related to their job. 82%. So that's regularly experiencing anxiety. 54% said they experienced depression directly related to the job. 31% would have taken medication for depression or anxiety. That's almost a third of teachers. And get this one, 34% would have had to take time off work as a result of stress or poor mental health directly related to work. So if that's not a crisis, I don't know what is. And these are, I have a colleague who works in research, and she always says to me, well, how do they compare with national figures? And they are significantly higher.
They tell me life is beautiful.